Arya Patel's camel hair scarf whipped across her goggles as the Gobi dawn came up orange and dusty. A month ago, she'd been sweating over isotope ratios in an Edinburgh basement. Now she was the acting leader of the International Cretaceous Expedition, a promotion that still felt fragile enough to crumble under one misswung trowel. Yet so far the dig had run smoothly. 28 mapped fossil sites, 6 articulated skeletons, and, crown jewel of the season, a nearly intact clutch of oviraptor eggs. The eggs rested in a plywood field safe propped on crushed stone ballast outside the supply tent. Every evening, Arya checked the humidity gauges herself, terrified the precious ovoids might crack before they ever saw a conservation lab. She doubted she would sleep at all if it weren't for Miguel Angel Torres, the camp cook, who kept everyone fed on stews so peppery they scalded the sandflies right off your skin. Miguel had a baritone laugh, a steel guitar he strummed by the generator lights, and a habit of humming while he diced onions at 4 in the morning. So when Arya awoke on the 7th morning of week 5 to silence from the kitchen shack, her first feeling was not annoyance, but dread. She pulled on her boots, crossed the packed sand, and pushed open the door. No Miguel. The oil drum stove was stone cold, the enamel coffee pot bone dry. Pan shelves were neat, knives hung in ordered rows, but the jar of cumin, a spice Miguel declared my mother's heartbeat, lay on the counter, lid off, pungent powder scattered like wind-blown rust. Arya hurried back outside. Beyond the striped mess awning, the plywood safe gaped open. The metal straps were still padlocked, but the lid had been levered up along a splintered hinge. Inside sat only a mound of cushioning silt. The oviraptor clutch, 14 eggs, each worth 10 dissertations, and a small fortune on any black market fossil sheet, was gone. Cries rose from tents as the team woke to Arya's shouts. Professor Abramson, senior advisor who mostly stayed in base camp grading funding proposals, trudged out with bed-creased hair. Lena Wu, photographic specialist, sprinted for her camera drone. Bryce Mallory, the excavation brute who could lift shale plates like pizza boxes, looked ready to throttle someone, anyone. And Catherine Collins, liaison for the expedition's corporate sponsor, emerged impeccable as ever in khaki and lipstick the color of wet clay. 2 crises, Arya announced. A stolen egg clutch and a missing cook. I need everyone's help, but in the right order. First we find Miguel, alive. She gathered them in a semicircle while the sun cleared the horizon. Sand glinted like broken glass. Could he have taken the eggs himself? Collins asked with chilly emphasis on he. Arya's stomach twisted. She hated that her sponsor's rep assumed the lone Mexican staffer must be the criminal, but she kept her voice level. Miguel signed a standard non-disclosure and has no paleontology training. He wouldn't know how to fence an oviraptor clutch, and he came with a glowing reference from the last 2 field projects. We treat him as missing, possibly abducted, until evidence says otherwise. Abramson nodded approval. Collins's only reply was a close-mouthed smile. Arya divided tasks. Lena would fly the drone for a radial search. Bryce would inventory camp for other missing items. Abramson would radio the desert rangers posted 2 hours away. Arya herself walked to the boundary where vehicle ruts cut fresh through the grit. She kneeled, examining. The marks were narrow, symmetrical, quad bike tires rather than the expedition's land cruisers. A light vehicle had rolled in from the east after midnight, stopped near the kitchens, then continued toward the dry gulch that snaked between low buttes beyond camp. She followed on foot, pulse pounding. 20 minutes in, Something glittered at the rut's edge, a droplet of hardened amber resin no larger than a sunflower seed. She smiled grimly. It was shellac from the consolidant she had painted on micro cracks of the egg surfaces. Whoever lifted the clutch wasn't careful. They'd chipped a flake and tracked it like breadcrumbs. Her radio crackled. Lena. Ari, drone picked up heat signatures northwest, about 3 kilometers, slow-moving quad, then stopped in shadowside of Gulant Ridge. Aria relayed coordinates to Abramson for the Rangers, but impatience scratched her bones. Miguel could be bleeding in that shadow right now. She jogged back, commandeered one of the cruisers, and set off with Bryce riding shotgun. Wind kicked dust devils over the hood. Bryce loaded the only 2 flare guns they had. Within 20 minutes, Gulant Ridge loomed, a wave of quartzite fins. The quad tracks ended behind a slab of overhang that formed a natural garage. Beneath it squatted an empty utility trailer with foam padding lining its bed, the perfect cradle for fossil eggs. The faint aroma of cumin drifted out. Aria's heartbeat doubled. They crept forward, Bryce brandishing a tire iron. Around the trailer's far side, a figure lay on the ground, wrists duct-taped, gag loose around his neck. Miguel. He was conscious, blinking at them in groggy relief. As Bryce cut the tape, Aria whispered, "Estás bien?" "Si, just a bump," he muttered. "They used my spice to cover solvent smell. Said if I cooperated, I'd be free by evening." They? 1 man, 1 woman. She gave the orders. Aria's mind drew a line straight back to Catherine Collins. Too simple? Maybe. But there was more. She noticed flecks of lipstick on Miguel's shirt collar, the same wet clay shade Collins favoured. "Where are the eggs?" she asked. Miguel pointed deeper into the ridge. He drove them on the quad with a flight case. She followed on foot, carrying a satellite phone. Aria and Bryce moved Miguel into the cruiser, left him water and the flare gun, and continued on foot clockwise around the ridge. Columns of rock formed maze-like corridors. They split, Bryce heading left, Aria right, both radios open. Aria advanced, watching for more shellac flecks. 10 minutes later, she came upon a low sandstone alcove whose floor had been swept clean. The flight case sat open. Inside lay the eggs, row on row, intact but unprotected in the rising heat. A man knelt beside them, fiddling with desiccant packets, narrow shoulders, sun-bleached hair under a ball cap. Aria recognized him after a second. Jason Haller, Collins's logistician, the quiet fellow who maintained the satellite link. She levelled Bryce's tire iron like a sabre. "Step away, Jason." He jerked, palms up. "Dr. Patel, this isn't what you—" "Stop. Back." He obeyed. She radioed Bryce. No reply, probably out of range. She eye-flicked the ridgeline. "Where's Collins?" Jason licked dry lips. "Calling the buyer. We get a chopper pickup in 40 minutes. Aria almost laughed. The plan was audacious. A helicopter could clear the border in under an hour. Eggs sold to some oligarch's private vault. "You're finished," she said, edging to close the case. "Rangers are on their way." Jason's gaze drifted past her shoulder. Too late, she spun. Collins stepped from a crack in the wall, holding a compact, semi-automatic pistol, like she'd been born with it. "Dr. Patel," she said, tone cordial. "I'm relieved to see the eggs safe. Close the lid and slide it over." Aria assessed distances. 4 meters. Collins's finger rested crooked on the trigger guard. Experienced. Aria obeyed, breath shallow, nudged the case with her boot. "Where's Bryce?" Collins asked Jason. "He's looking for us." "Then we must move quickly." Collins tossed Aria a coil of zip ties. "Bind your ankles. Do it properly." Arya did, but left slack. She needed a distraction. Her eyes flicked to the eggs. Heat would soon desiccate them, making extraction markings obvious to any customs agent, reducing their value. Collins must know that, yet she'd removed the chill packs. Was she planning to keep the fossils long-term? Or was the whole operation rushed? Stall, she decided. You won't get full price if these overheat. Shellac softens above 42 Celsius. The consolidant will run. Collins shrugged. The buyer rehydrates them during mounting. Cuban humidity works wonders. The nonchalance chilled Arya more than the gun. Collins turned to Jason. Carry the case to the pickup zone. Jason hesitated. What about her? I'll secure Dr. Patel. You load the cargo. Jason hefted the box, staggered off down a bend. Collins motioned Arya to hop forward. They took a winding route until a sharp cry echoed ahead, Jason yelling. Collins cursed, sped up, dragging Arya by the arm. Rounding a buttress, they found Jason prostrate, Bryce standing over him with fists like quarried granite. The egg case teetered on a boulder. Drop the pistol, Bryce growled. Blood oozed from a cut above his eyebrow, evidence of earlier scuffle. Collins swung the gun toward Bryce. Reflex took over. Arya kicked sideways, free foot slamming Collins's shin. The pistol fired into the air. Bryce charged, wrenching it away. Collins fell, twisting her ankle. Dust settled. Bryce zip-tied Collins's wrists. Arya reclaimed her own ankles. They retrieved the egg case, inspecting. No visible damage. Relief left Arya weak, but the saga wasn't finished. A distant thwop-thwop rattled the sky. Helicopter inbound. Jason, now bound beside Collins, smirked. Told you, and you only have 2 flare guns. Actually, 1. Miguel had the other. Arya radioed him, voice urgent. Miguel, flare now. Coordinates 72-Alpha. A minute later, a crimson comet arced above the ridge's eastern lip. The chopper engine noise veered, pilot probably curious. Then a second sound joined, the diesel roar of Ranger jeeps. Abramson had done his part. The helicopter circled once, saw the armed vehicles bouncing in, and peeled away south, unwilling to break Mongolian aviation laws for fossil contraband. By noon, Rangers escorted Collins and Jason in cuffs. The eggs were back in their padded safe inside a newly reinforced steel locker. Yet Arya couldn't rest. Something still nagged her, a puzzle piece askew. She found Miguel in the mess tent nursing tea. Gracias otra vez, she said, squeezing his shoulder. But tell me every detail of last night, when they came, what they said. He recounted. Collins had approached the kitchen before midnight, asking for coffee. While he brewed, Jason sneaked behind, struck him with a pan. They dragged him to the quad, forced him to carry spices, so the security dogs at checkpoints smell nothing. Collins kept saying, once the eggs are airborne, we're free. Airborne, not helicopter, maybe plane. But the planned chopper was for pickup, unless there was a buyer with a private runway across the border. Arya returned to camp office where Lena pored over drone footage. They replayed dawn images. The quad, the riders, the ridge, but also, farther out, a plume of dust heading north 30 minutes before sunrise. A second vehicle, larger. Abramson entered, frowning at the looping video. What now, Arya? We caught them. Not all, she said quietly. They had a backup courier. Collins and Jason refused to speak, but tumbleweeds of evidence rolled in. The expedition's stock of plaster jackets, 30 kilos, was missing. 2 lithium batteries for ground-penetrating radar also gone. Heavy items you'd only load into a truck. Arya, Lena, and Bryce departed at first light next day, following the dust trail captured by drone. 50 kilometers north, they found ruts leading into an abandoned Soviet airfield, cracked tarmac, rusted hangars, and, inside one, plaster jackets stacked neat as white coffins. A single egg rested broken on the floor, yolk of 80 million years marbling the concrete. Whoever was to meet Collins had fled overnight, spooked by her arrest. The team collected the jackets, gathered fragments, and sealed the hangar with ranger custody. That evening, around a supper, Miguel seasoned extra mild for everyone's nerves. Arya addressed her crew. We nearly lost our most significant find because we assumed remoteness equals safety. Starting tomorrow, double night watches, biometric locks on all field safes, and every egg gets micro-tagged. Our science deserves nothing less. Applause rippled. Fatigue and pride commingled around the folding tables. After dishes, Arya sat on a dune edge, journal open to document events. Headlamps bobbed in the quarry like fireflies. Orion tilted above. Abramson settled beside her. "You handled this like a veteran PI," he said. She smiled wanly. "I'm a postgrad with imposter syndrome." "Not anymore. Today proves leadership is as much about safeguarding knowledge as discovering it." She watched wind erase their footprints, thought of the eggs slumbering in their refurbished vault, embryos curled like secret commas awaiting translation. For all the desert could steal, it also preserved bones, dreams, entire worlds under shifting sand. And Arya Patel, dig leader now in fact as well as title, intended to guard those worlds fiercely until they could speak their long silenced stories again